On this one, I'm going to show you how to plaster a wall so that you can accomplish great things. Maybe not just quite as big as that room. Again, the background on this one will be plasterboard. This clip is sand and cement, but same rules apply. And on plasterboard, more so than sand and cement, but if sand and cement meets plasterboard, you will need to scrim tape it up. And the reason for the scrim tape, guys, is that it should stop cracking, or should I say, should help to reduce cracking. It's not always a guarantee, as there's many factors that can cause cracks, such as vibration for one. And again, this is a solid wall. These walls are all, this plasterboard in general here is actually glued on and screwed to a solid wall. Did do a video on this a while back, just explaining more about that, but I wanted to actually do a proper plastering demonstration. And again, if we were doing the ceiling, we would wrap it around the corner, but if not, we're just going to offer up the scrim tape just to close in any gaps, and again, like I said, help stop or reduce cracking. And again, just because you scrim tape something doesn't mean that it's guaranteed not to crack. That's just not possible. Like I said, vibrations and there's other things can cause cracking as well, like humidity, dampness, etc. Heat. But yeah, so first thing to do here is the plasterboard. Whether it's a solid wall, they're dot and dabbed, or the boards are screwed on to joists, metal or timber, lath basically, that you give it a quick check, make sure there's nothing loose, there's no busted plasterboard, make sure it's nice and clean, dust free. You can actually see me as I say that, just checking myself. Plaster does not want to be over a dusty area. The chances of it sticking would be greatly reduced if you do so. So make sure you brush down the wall, scrape it if necessary. If you have already plastered some walls either side, you've had it go, make sure you clean down your corners and make sure there's no jobs of plaster on the wall that are going to make finishing the wall that much harder. You can see I'm actually removing some loose paper there. Again, you don't really want to plaster over loose paper as it can bubble up later on. And again, I do have a video on scrim taping up ceilings and walls, just a demonstration on that. But usually this is the way I go about it. Just make sure everything's nice and tight and clean, and just self-adhesive tape. You can get, well, back in the day there was a green tape that wasn't sticky, and before that there was jute cloth or canvas or hessian, many names. Now you have fiberglass self-adhesive sticky tape, which is, when it sticks, it is better, but if it dries out a bit too much and the glue's gone and you're doing a ceiling and it's falling off, it can be a bit of a nightmare. But you can still use it. You can just do it the old-fashioned way and stick it on as plaster and make sure it's well bedded in. But luckily this one's sticking, and just want to make sure you get all the joints covered, and then I just use my trowel. My trowel's sharp enough to cut it. You can use scissors or a Stanley knife to get it cut to size. And once you have the scrim tape all on and your wall's clean, tidy, you're happy with everything, then you're pretty much ready for the plastering. But I want to just bring this up close to show you, if you're not going around the corners, just another quick glance at what way I'm offering it up to the joints here. So as you see, how I'm around the corner on this one, I'm just going up tight to the wall. You can go around it if you want and cut it off after, but you do risk slicing the paintwork and the wall that is already finished that you're not actually plastering. So this is the tactic that I use, and it works quite well for if you're not, doing the ceiling of the walls, you're just doing a dead wall. As you can see, both sides done the same. That one's not too bad. If it's pretty close, it's not really necessary to scrim it. So now we have all the preparation work done. It's just really down to the mix. I'm lucky enough to have a small battery powered drill here. It actually has quite a wee kick to it, the Evolution mixer. It's going well. It has a wee light and stuff as well. Did do a review on that, and we'll do more on it in the future as well, as long as it keeps going for me. But so far so good. Do recommend opening the window when you're mixing, or mix outside if possible. I'm actually upstairs here, so mixing outside means I'll have to carry a bucket up that's about 50 kilograms. I am strong, but I'm not stupid, so I'm better off carrying it up, mixing it on the job. And again, it's just a small job here, so I don't really need a spat board or stand. I can mix it up and use it out of the bucket. Find that just as handy on smaller jobs. Possibly if you put the bucket up on a crate or something, you can save your back a little bit. I know some plasters, like myself, they're quite tall, so bending down, you want to try and limit that. The job's hard enough as it is. But yeah, onto the mix, guys. Clean, cold, fresh water. Obviously your preparation should involve covering up the whole area, as you see that I've already done. Clean, cold water. And if you're using one bag, it's going to be roughly one of them yellow buckets there, 3-gallon bucket to one bag. But you might want to reduce the water a wee slight bit and just top it up. Once you nearly get your mix done, you just want to top it up gradually to get it to a nice paste, something like custard, or you know, like a runny peanut butter. I wouldn't say peanut butter, but like a runny peanut butter. Peanut butter would be more something you want to do for patches or wee thick areas, as you know, it does rip the bread when you spread it. So you know, just nice and creamy like custard will do grand. And of course, after every mix, clean up your drill, otherwise you'll be beating it with a hammer and it'll probably not last too long. So I'm just sort of wetting my hawk here and my trowel. That will help the stuff not dry into it, so you won't get all the dry tears when you're applying the plaster, and it'll also make the tools easier to clean. Now you might want to prime your hawk and trowel by just sort of putting a couple of scoops on and scraping them back off into the bucket, and what that'll do, I didn't do it there as I've been plastering for a long time, but what that will do will be it'll prime it so that the plaster won't just slip off them just as easy. So something to think about. Again, I'm using a Refina trowel, as nearly all my videos it's either Refina or Spain Jackson. Somebody did ask me why no Tizak, or sorry, why no Marshalltown, and just the reason for that is I'm just so happy using the Refina one that, you know, when something's working, keep doing it. And again, using a Pointsman Hawk, I'm not even sure they still make them or still sell them. I haven't heard from the guy that designed that in a long time. Hopefully he's okay and stuff, and hopefully he is actually still selling them, because I have found it that bit easier on my elbow, as it keeps your funny shaped handle. It is a bit of a weird looking hawk or handboard, but the funny sort of angle on it does help my elbow. So, you know, and apparently what they always used to ask him was, when are you going to make something for the right hand? When are you going to design a trowel that makes it a bit easier? I think the Refina Superflexes and the likes of the Ragni Superflexes and Axe Superflexes have maybe made that a wee bit easier as the stuff tightens, but we'll get to that later on in the video. What I'm doing here, back to the harder plaster of the wall, is covering up all the joints here. And what that'll do is it'll just make sure your scrims, one, doesn't fall off, and two, once you spread up over them there and you cover them, I recommend 2 coats, guys. 1 coat isn't great, I'd always recommend 2 coats. It's the rules, and that's what it says on the bag. So if you go 1 coat, what it does, it'll dry that much quicker. Even if you put it on thicker, it's not great if you're putting on your 2 coats here, which your first coat will be about a mil and a half maybe even 2 millimeters, and then your second coat then can be 1.5 mil or 1 millimeter, just a wee cream over the top. But your second coat will freshen the whole thing up again and put that wee bit more moisture back into the first coat, so that, you know, it's not just drawn, the moisture's not just drawn out at the back quicker, and it'll be a stronger wall, trust me. So what I've done there is covered all my scrim tapes, and like I was saying, that will help them not shine through. If you don't cover them, you can still get away with just one coat and then another coat over the top. But the process I'm going to do here is I'm covering the scrims, then I'm going to give it all another first coat, then I'm going to let that pull in a wee while, and I'm going to give it a second coat. And when I say a wee while, I'll probably leave it 5 minutes, and then just go straight on it. You can see up the top left there that the boards, how they sucked a bit of moisture out, the way it was going white round the edges. That is it actually. That's a bit of the moisture leaving the plaster. So you can see how multiple smaller layers will have a benefit over just one layer of plaster. And again, keeping it thin. These boards are a lovely good shape because the wall behind it was a good shape. Again, if you're watching this, you're most likely doing a stud wall or something pretty flat. Maybe you're re-skimming a wall. Whereas if you're re-skimming a wall, you will need to do PVA. But again, I'll go over that in a different video. We also do have videos on re-skimming walls. How to replaster a wall is on the channel. And again, we'll be covering that again in the future, for sure. There's lots of things I want to go over now that we'll have a bit of a better camera, and I think I'm getting the sound quality better for you. So there's more things that I would just want to freshen up on the channel. Again, I'll never really delete anything off the channel. I sort of like to have it there so that I can see how much the videos themselves are improving. But I'm sure if you go all the way back to start, I don't know what age the channel is now. It could be 10 years old, 15 years old. I'm not sure how old this channel actually is now, but I'm sure you'll see that my methods don't change greatly. I did do that one off the one in particular video, how to replaster a wall. I did that off ladders, and somebody asked why no crate. I think the crate was on in a different room or something and had ladders, so it wasn't carrying them all over the place. But using the crate on this one, I do recommend a wee bench. I do have a better bench, and it's a bit of a better working platform. It has steps up onto it and down off it then, so it is a bit safer. Where I started, which I always do, I start top left and I work over to the right, and then what I'll do is I'll fill the bottom in from left to right also. Doing it that way, guys, you could start wherever you want. You could start in the middle of the wall, work around the circle if you really wanted, or start at the bottom. You could do the bottom and then you can pull the top in. But there is reasons for literally everything, that the way I do it in plastering and why I do it. And the reason I do top left to right is, well, one of the reasons is you're getting into a bit of a routine, a bit of a system, so that you know I've covered left to right, and now I need to go to bottom left to right. And later on, when it's setting, you'll be working everything the same way, left to right. And when it is picking up after you've it all coated and you're trailing, it means you're pulling the water left to right and top to bottom, so you're taking the water away. If you start at the bottom, your bottom might start tightening. Most likely the first place to tighten is the first place that's on the wall, due to suction and the fact that the plaster's been spread out a bit thinner, so it will dry out quicker as well. So not necessarily so effective on a small wall, but you will find that on the likes of a landing wall or something bigger, like a larger wall, a wall that's maybe twice the size of this, you will find that wherever you put the stuff on first will start setting first. So it's a great way, left to right. It's a great system. Being able to know you've covered the wall, and being able to know that where you're going to start again will be the place that's going to be needing troweled up first and smoothed in. But as you can see, when I'm applying the plaster, guys, I'm trying to get nice big long trowel marks right up and down, and basically that'll just make your wall nice and flat as you go. It is good to be fussy even on your first coat. and try and take as many lines out. It's not, you know, it's not a big, oh, you must, because you should have a bit of time with the plaster. I think the pot life's about 30 minutes, which means you should have 30 minutes workability. But you might want to get it on a bit quicker than that in warm weather. If you look at that window, you can't see out it, and that's because the sun is bouncing off the window. It's quite warm today. Again, that's another thing to think about. Weather does actually have an impact on the speed that the plaster sets. It's one reason why I've never put any timelines to actually plaster on the wall. As in, you know, first coat, you know, and then second coat 10-15 minutes later, and then let's trial it 15 minutes later after that, then let's trial 20 minutes after that, then let's trial half an hour after that. The reason I haven't done that is because weather and suction, every wall is different. Every day is different. A damp day, a damp wet day, and you're doing a window wall, you will actually find on site, especially on sites, cold houses that have no heating, that wall most likely will sit a lot longer than an inside plasterboard wall somewhere. In a cupboard, you'll find that cupboard sets quicker than the window wall, and that's due to the moisture, believe it or not, and the cold, the temperature. So it all has an effect. Again, if you're working around sockets, guys, make sure they're switched off and taped up and nice and safe, just the way this one is. And take your time around them. That's the detail where it will matter, guys. That's the places that you need to spend that wee bit more time around. Beads, reveals, corners, sockets. You know, they're the wee parts that you'll want to get them pretty neat. Again, for the likes of around a socket or something like that, you can use a small trowel or a small tool. And what I'm doing now is washing the trowel. After every time you apply the plaster, guys, you should wash your trowel up. This stuff sets, you know, pretty quick on the back of the trowel. So you don't want to be having to take a scraper to the trowel. Keep it nice and clean. Try and clean it into the water, into the bucket of water. And what that'll do is, you know, it'll save you having an ice rink, a slippy floor, or destroying your carpet or your tiles. So keep it clean. Clean work area is a safe work area, so bear that in mind, guys, when you're throwing things about the place, just to try and be a wee bit more organised. Again, now on to the second coat, and it probably is about 10 minutes later. But again, if you're doing a small one, it's not a great thing. You don't necessarily need to wait 10 minutes, just stand there, look at the wall for 10 minutes. You possibly can go on it straight away. Again, it might take a wee bit more skill, but most likely you're watching this and you're going to have a go, or you're just here to see the stages of which plastering happens, which is, it's all good, and questions are all welcome. Don't be feeling silly for asking questions. The silly person's the one that doesn't ask questions, because they never move forward, they never learn. So one thing I did when I was an apprentice was really twist every boss's ear that I ever had and try and gain all their knowledge and try and learn from their mistakes, try and learn, you know, what works, what doesn't work. The quicker you learn them things, again, most times experience will teach you a lot of things itself, just putting the time in, getting your hands dirty. But like I said, if you can gain knowledge, go ahead and get it. So don't ever be afraid to ask questions, as silly or stupid, or, you know, if I haven't answered a question during the video, there's most likely another 10 that I still could answer, and just the question has never been asked. But yeah, so we're putting on the second coat, and again, quite consistent, top left to top right, and then I'll go back down, bottom left to bottom right. Sometimes I say that round the wrong way on videos and people get a bit confused. If you are left-handed, you can do the opposite to me, as you'll find it more comfortable working away from your body. Again, on sand and cement, I still work left to right, and it's to me personally, it's down to your stance, what way you're standing and what way you're laying up your body. Everybody's different. I know a lot of the English spreads love to render from right to left, but personally I'm still left to right. And again, if you're going to do dry dash, you'll understand that as well, as that's a different video, guys, altogether. But yeah, second coat, even more important to be as neat as possible, trying to take out every line as possible and fill out all the voids. Try to do this as if you leave the wall for 20 minutes, that when you come back and the wall is tighter, that it's not going to affect you too much to trowel up. But the way, sometimes there's a thing called tiger stripes in plaster, and you'll find that you can get them if your first coat's not very neat and you didn't flatten it in, then you can get the tiger stripes, and what that is the underneath plaster setting quicker than the top, which it not necessarily is unpaintable, just sometimes doesn't look very nice. So you have to bear that in mind, guys. But yeah, make your life easy. If your first coat wasn't very flat, give that a wee flattening and then apply your second coat. But most times, if you're taking your time, you're nice and neat, that you'll be grand to go ahead and just second coat straight over your first coat. Again, like I said, you're being even more fussy. Each pass, you must be fussier than the pass before, and for that reason is because the stuff is getting harder and it is setting faster, and there's less forgiving in it, guys. If there's a bump or a big hole, one, you're not going to have any plaster left because it's going to be set. Like I said, you've only 30 minutes to apply it. And two, you can't fill it with fat, which is stuff you trowel up off the top as it shrinks, and also it's much more diluted. Diluted plaster is weaker, believe it or not, than a mixer thick plaster, which if you look at the plaster and I turn in there, it's quite like a thick custard. Maybe it is a bit more peanut buttery at this stage, but that will be a lot stronger than stuff that is going to be cut away later on, which we call in the trade fat. I've heard some people calling it clout as well, but I'm not sure where they got that one from. But the fat in it, again, it all comes from that there used to be animal fat in the actual plaster, but it's basically also you're skimming the fat off the top. So yeah, working left to right, everything nice and clean, and you can see there's still a few lines in the middle there, and they're not going to bug me too much. But again, you might want to take them out and keep the walls flat as possible, and act as if the wall could set at any minute. But you know, hopefully it doesn't on you if it's your first time, but just act as if it can, and that way you'll always be ahead. Don't forget to wash up your tools, especially the hawk and trowel. You'll not need the hawk from this point on. Quick reminder, this is going to be all the same methods as if you were plastering over sand and cement or replastering a wall. Everything from here on is the same method. So we got all our plaster on, coated, both coats, tools washed. Again, this is optional. You can give it all a quick flattening with just a trowel, but the Skim here from Rafina will flatten it all in very good, and will count as a first trowel or a flattening more so. And first trowel, we'll call that when we start adding water, and this stage will be just a flattening in, and that's just where you're just trying to iron out some of them lines, and again, if there's any hollows you can fill them out. But hopefully you've took your time coating your first and second coat, that won't be needed. But yeah, just starting at the top here. One other thing you might want to do, my corners aren't too dirty, but you might want to just wash them beforehand, and what that'll do is it'll make it'll make the wall that much sweeter, and it'll make trialing up much easier later on, and it'll make cleaning them corners and angles easier also. But as you see, this spatula is working absolutely brilliant, and it's taking all the lines out very quickly and efficiently, much quicker than the trowel. As you can see, I'm now looking for problems more than finding them. But again, make sure after you use something like this, you wash it up. And as you've seen there, took off practically nothing. But very important to keep all your plastering trowels and tools clean. Otherwise, when you come to mixing buckets, you'll have stones and grit, and it will affect you when it comes to coating and also finishing the wall. So very important. Also, if you do use one of these, try and keep that blade cover, keep them protected. So next stage is the first trowel, and this is where we're really going to need to introduce water. Again, sometimes you can bypass that flattening in stage if you've coated the wall really neat, and or it's pulling in, and again you second coated the wall really neat where it almost counts as a trowel in. But I'd probably let this sit 15-20 minutes possibly. Again, you're better doing the touch test and seeing if the wall's tightening up and the moisture's leaving the wall, and then you know you're good to trowel. It's again, it all comes with experience and hands-on, guys. If I sat here and told you timings, it's never really going to work, because the temperature, the mix, the background, the suction all takes a toll on the plaster setting. So all these things have to be thought about when you're about to plaster the wall. During your preparation, this is all the things you need to take into consideration. For instance, this plaster I'm using here should set in about 2 hours. That would be very similar to multi-finish. So you've got to keep all that in mind, that you only really have 2 hours to finish it. If it is a hot wall, which means it's sucking the moisture out quickly, it will actually set quicker. And again, it's a hot day, so that'll also make the plaster set quicker. And just having a standing tea break, and we'll keep on working when I'm just hydrating, a bit of tea. But yeah, if you can take a wee sip now and again when you're working, keep you hydrated, guys, and keep your energy levels up. Plastering's hard enough without a dry throat. But yeah, just started top left, cleaning the angles as I go with my brush. Again, some people prefer using the wee water bottles and spraying it. I prefer the brush, just find it easier, cleaning the angles, cleaning the trowel, and you know, you can flick the water on with it just the same. But just my preference, each to their own. I'm sure the spray bottle is pretty good. It's just anytime I've used them, they've always broke after no time. The brush, they're, you know when they're gonna go, you know when they're on their way out, you know when they're no good for cleaning, or they're just no good for skimming. So that's my preferences on it. So again, like I said, flying along the top here, and then I'll jump on to the bottom here and show you how that's done. Again, just cleaning the angle here, being careful not to get too much water on the parts of the wall that are already troweled up, otherwise we'll have to work that water off. So similar to the top, starting on the left, then I'm going to work my way over to the right. And on this one, guys, I pull the trowel up along, and then I'll pull the trowel out. And I said that in a previous video, that just stops them hooks in the corners. If you were just to pull out, you might find that gradually the plaster will just do this curvy motion, and before it's before you've even noticed, it's too late. it's set and you're not going to be able to trowel it back out then. So you're best to hit it both directions, up and down, and then come across from it, and you'll have a nice square edge and a nice flat wall. Again, troweling the water up and to my right, so the water's coming from the nose of the trowel to the heel, and that chases the water away from the part that you've already troweled up, so that you're not leaving dirty water marks. Again, dirty water marks, that's a video on its own, but if you do have dirty water marks, it can foul the paint job, so you're going to want to try and minimise leaving them about. Also, if you do leave them in the first pass and second pass, the next pass they might rip the wall, and it's going to look very messy and not very clean and professional, and that's the kind of wall we're trying to leave. So follow suit. Again, top to bottom now, and working it over the corner. And like I say in all the videos, you want to start reducing the water at about this area, otherwise you're going to just be troweling water all over the place. It's going to make a bit of a mess of the floor, so you're going to want to reduce that by the time you get to the right hand corner. So previously we've done our preparation, we've done our first coat, second coat, flattening, and we've done our very first wet trowel, and now we're on the second wet trowel, which is carbon copy of the first wet trowel. Again, concentrating on these angles, pretty hard on this one as the ceiling is a texture ceiling, so have to pay a wee bit more attention to it and a wee bit more muscle in there just to make sure it's nice and clean, where the walls aren't so bad because they're smooth. But yeah, as you want to do this, you want to keep clean water and you want to take it out, guys, and away. You don't want to keep brushing it too much back and forward. You want to try and wash it away to the corner that you're working to. And just like the first troweling in, we're starting top left to right. Again, that's where the very first bit of plaster was put on, and that's what we expect to then pick up and set that wee bit faster than the rest of the wall. So we're in a bit of a routine now. By this stage, you maybe be getting a bit more comfortable with the trowel, with the movements, with the wall itself. You'll find that you can put more pressure in, yes, a wee bit more muscle. And again, you might be starting to feel a bit tired at this stage, but that's okay. Stick with it. You have plenty of time. I tend to find you have a wee bit more time on the wall if you have done all the previous steps that much neater. That you have more time, because even if this wall started to set off, you have it pretty neat, and you'll find you'll get around it that much quicker because of your hard work put in. And yeah, just moving that screw. Don't want to step down onto it, but again, working all the way along is very important, guys. These corners are what everybody will notice, even non-plasters or tradesmen. Anybody's going to see an ugly, dirty corner. That's the thing about plastering. It's all on show, inside, outside. Doesn't matter what it is you've done. People can see it with their eyes, and they can even touch it, they can feel it. It's there on show, it's not to be hidden, and I don't want anybody saying the painter will fix it. It's up to us, make his life easy. Same as for the spark too, if there's sockets, make sure they're nice and clean and easy to be fitted again. And again, if there's skirting to go on, we're keeping a nice straight line. It's not a big bell cast at the bottom, so that the skirting can go on nice and easy. And if you are a bit sloppy at the bottom, guys, try and cut that back and try and start thinking about the guy coming behind you, and you'll get up a good reputation that way. It's if you can make his life easy and he asks who did the job, then your name's going to keep popping up as being a nice, steady plasterer who is looking after the guy coming after him. Hopefully the guy before you did his job pretty tidy, but again, blasters get it harder than anybody else. It's up to us to keep on going. So you can see it just turned the trowel backwards there, and that's because the back of the trowel is nice and square still, where the front is a bit more broken in. But yeah, I've got from left to right here, and then we'll jump onto the bottom and we'll pull the bottom left now, and we're going to work to the bottom right, just sort of on my knees here to make sure I get good pressure in. Again, if you are going to be working off your knees, try and get knee pads, guys, or some kind of wee pad you can kneel on. I'm not too bad. I have dust sheets down, and there's also carpet down, so it's actually quite soft, and a wooden floor before that. So it's not the hardest thing to be kneeling on, and it's practically dry. Again, if you have spilled a lot of water or plaster, try and avoid getting your knees damp, guys, and wet, and your knees will thank you years to come. So definitely keep that in mind. But yeah, just having to take a wee phone call here as I work, so a wee bit unorthodox here. I'm gonna have to flick water on and then use my same hand, but it's the same idea as the trowel before. We're just working the water up and to the right, and we're taking it away from the wall that we're finishing, and this wall, it's coming in pretty well, and filling any little tiny wee details. At this point, you're going to want to try and avoid having any holes, so after this trowel, it's going to be nearly impossible to start filling them, because the fat won't set just as good at all. It's quite diluted and it'll shrink more. So again, that's why I'm always trying to drill in the point of being nice and neat, nice and tidy, getting the wall nearly finished before it is, and that's all for good reason. And you know, it just becomes easier and easier on each stage if you've done the first stage overkill. But yeah, so just work all the way along, and again, start to reduce your water when you get to the right hand corner, and that'll stop you having to chase that water all over the wall. So on to the final trowel, the third wet trowel. And again, you can use a flexi trowel for this if you wish. This one doesn't matter either way. You can still use a steel trowel, guys. All the flexi trowel does, it makes life a wee bit handier. The fact that it's just a wee bit less pressure on the elbow and the arm, the shoulder, the wrist, the hand, yeah, the body basically. So if you can get one, I definitely would recommend, but it's not a be all and end all. You can still do it with your steel trowel, and again, the flexi trowels are handy for when the heart of the wall is, obviously, and you should have it all nice and flat by that stage, so it does take the pressure off and greatly reduces fatigue and pain. And if you get used to them early on in your plastering career, I'd say it would be really, really beneficial. That being said, it would be important to also learn how to finish the wall without one, so that you can do it both ways, just in case you'll be on a job, your flexi trowel gets broke, dented or cracked or whatever, chipped, you still know how to do it with your steel trowel. It's also a reason why I always have multiple trowels ready to go, broken, and for that very reason, I know how easily a trowel or two could get damaged by accident, so having a backup is always a big must for me. Again, usually the third trowel I do when the wall's starting to turn brown a wee bit, where on this occasion you can slightly see it on all the joints that they're just picking up a wee bit more, but you do find sometimes the plaster doesn't give you that indication that it is setting, so you do need to touch it, and then you'll realise, right, there's no moisture left in the wall, or very little, it feels a bit more grainy, and you know then it's ready to go. And you don't want to leave it too much longer. Again, after this trowel, we can do a polishing trowel, but this here trowel, it won't be very necessary at all. But it can be good practice for one's learning, because you're going around the wall again. It's a final inspection. You know then you've looked at every inch of the wall. There's no bad bumps or ripples. There's no scrim tapes showing out. There's no holes, and the angles are all nice and clean. So that's one reason I like to do a hard trowel. Not just because it polishes and shines the wall, but also that fact that you know you have passed the wall. You have spent every second looking at it there, and you know there's nothing that you can see or feel, so you know the wall's ready for paint after that stage. And again, it can be good if you're doing multiple walls, because if there's any splatters on the opposite walls, you'll be able to clean them off as you'll feel them when you go to dry trowel it. But again, it's not a big need to be done. It's just good. It's good practice, especially like I said, for the apprentices and the ones learning the job. You'll not only break in your trowel a bit better, but you'll get used to using the trowel, the pressure, the angle, and like I said, it's going to be another look around the wall. But that's it, guys. That's how to plaster a wall. This one is a plasterboard wall. Actually, the plasterboards were soundproof boards, but again, every stage from the first coat up is the exact same way you would tackle any plasterboard wall, any ceiling. All the stages are the same. If it was a sand cement wall, all the stages are the same. If it was a PVA wall, you were re-skimming a wall, the stages are all the same. Obviously, preparation is different, but you can find all them videos on the channel, guys, of replastering, rendering. There's nearly everything. But again, this is another way, but I'm just doing a quick shine on the wall, my quick double check of everything. As long as you keep that blade nice and wet, guys, it'll not tear the wall. And if it does tear the wall, stop and give it another 10-20 minutes or so. Let it pick up more. And you know, I'm over the moon with the way the walls came in. And if you follow the stage, I'm sure you'll be able to plaster a wee wall like this without too much problems. But again, any questions, hit me up in the comments. I'd love to hear from us. And you know, no questions silly. The people that don't ask questions never find the answer, and they're gonna always stay silly. So you might feel silly for a minute or two for asking, but if you don't ask, you're going to be silly for the rest of your life. So that's it, guys. Subscribe for more. There's plenty there, and there's always new stuff coming in.